it's not that it's become more drama filled. It's just I think people have opened themselves up to kind of exploring Linux and hearing about the news because I remember trying that at the beginning and it was really hard. I just couldn't get many people to follow, but the tutorials were always where people would come back. And I don't know about your videos, but the news cycle type videos that I do, those are kind of hit hard and fast, and they trickle out pretty quick.
Right.
But like the tutorial style videos, I mean, I have. Well, I think Ubuntu like 2004 or 2204, one of the two. I mean, that one's gotten like 600,000 views and it just keeps chugging along. And it's just funny that all the weird intricacies of the Linux world.
Yeah, there's a dual boot one you have here from 2 years ago with 674,000.
Yeah.
There's a step-by-step guide for 2204, which is 266. And yeah, I see what you mean here.
Yeah, those are the ones that end up going to the top. It's kind of funny. I mean, it takes years.
Right.
That one, I think, took over 2 years to do, but it's quite interesting in our kind of, space, how you have tutorial videos and then you have the drama / news, I like to call it. But I personally, nowadays, the news is really taken over.
Yeah, I do have a lot of tutorial videos that I've made in the past, and some of those are like at the absolute top. Like one that is not a good video, but because there was just so little content on it, setting up multi-monitors with X-Render, that I think is like
awesome.
Second or third top video. The absolute top one, I'm pretty sure, is from the LTT Linux challenge, which, that's a special kind of news video.
Sure.
That one still gets views today because, the LTT video still gets views today. But most things, are not gonna survive like that. Oh no, so top one is an LTT Atlas OS video. I thought the other one was higher. Then the second one is like it's news, but it's also historical news. I find that historical videos also sort of act the same way as tutorial stuff, where people will always go back to, the history of Wayland or the history of X11, because it's not timely in the same way. My second top video is the can't print on Tuesday bug, if you know about that one.
I think I did watch this one. I can't remember quite what it was about.
There was an issue with the it wasn't with the cups, but it was with, I think, file. When it was trying to detect if a file was a PostScript file, if it had a certain string in it, it detected it as a different kind of file, but that... Oh no, I think it was parsing maybe the date string weirdly, and any Tuesday, it was detecting it as a different type of file instead of a PostScript file, leading to those prints breaking only when the PostScript file was generated on a Tuesday.
Wow. That's so intricate.
But this is a bug from like 10 years ago, right? So like it hasn't got that same timely, timeliness to it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of timeliness, what about the real-time kernel patch becoming, added directly into the kernel now instead of having to patch it from source yourself? I think you have a couple videos on that, I think.
Yeah, I did make a video on that one because I'd heard about the real-time kernel stuff like a while back, but I never actually bothered to like talk about it. So there's a lot of these topics where you'll hear about them and you're like, okay, I want to, like, especially if it's like a big topic. Like, I'm sure you feel like this about, because you've uploaded like a 4-hour tutorial on, was it C++ recently?
Correct, yeah.
I'm sure you think about that topic and you're like, okay, I want to do this, but there's a lot that goes into it. Yes.
And that's exactly it. One of the things that, I find interesting about the YouTube ecosystem in general is how much you really have to stay within your niche. Because, I personally have a lot of interest when it comes to, computing in general, right? From programming, engineering to Linux, all sorts of other things in between as well. But I've found that without, focusing on it on focusing on, let's say, Linux as a niche, as soon as I start venturing out to things like C, C++, if I'm not tying it back into Linux, it just doesn't perform at all. And it's not that I necessarily care for it to perform. It's that the message from the channel is really to just get more people into Linux and just in the get Linux in the hands of people. And since it kind of like doing a C++ dev on Linux erodes that user base, it pushes me away from even doing it. So that's one thing I wish that YouTube would improve on. But like kind of back on the real-time kernel, why I want to talk about that briefly is I spent about 6 months when I was this was probably like 7-8 years ago, really diving deep into the real-time Linux kernel, and specifically when it was just patching the kernel to become real time, and then trying to use it as real time. And what I learned over those 6 months was how there's really two like versions of, we'll call it real time Linux. Well, not real time Linux, real time. So there's a soft and a hard real time. I'm not sure if you're aware of it or not, but hard real time is something extremely predictable. I mean, the system completely fails if it's not hard real time. Versus soft real time, it wants to remain predictable, but if there are other processes that kind of get in the mix and try to preempt something, it is possible that they don't actually preempt whatever process is happening, and then you are actually not running real time, basically. So again, soft, hard real time. And what I learned from about 6 months of doing work on Linux is that it's soft real time, and I could not use it for my industrial processes that I was trying to use it for. So I spent, I don't know how many hours glued to these books, on hardware programming and real-time programming and real-time operating systems, and I'm trying to get this damn thing to work, and it was such a failure. I mean, it was the biggest failure I've ever had. My boss is just like, "What's taking so long?" I'm like, I don't know. It says it's hard real time. There was barely any documentation on it in the past, but I'm like, I'm trying, and I'm running the hardware, and I'm running my I/O, and it's coming out, and I got an oscilloscope hooked up and whatnot, and I'm just looking at this, and nothing's making sense. And then finally one day I just learned. I'm like, I know what the problem is here. It's soft real time. So it's one of those things that I really love Linux because you get to learn stuff like that. Like I got so deep in the kernel, for that time. And it was one of the reasons, and that's kind of why I brought it up, is why I love Linux so much is, I've spent intimate time with it. But anyways, I just, I saw real-time kernel popping up again, and I made a video not too long ago, I think, on the real-time kernel and trying to explain that same thing that I'm trying to explain now. But it's a crazy world that we live in as far as Linux goes. I love it.
Well, by Linux being open source, and by a lot of the software we run being open source, it gives you that opportunity to actually dig into it. And if something is not behaving in a way that you would expect it to, you can actually go and find that out. Like, if you're dealing with something weird happening on Windows, you can see what documentation they have. You can throw input at it and see what output comes out, but you can't really dig into what it's doing internally to really know exactly how things are working. So if something is weird, you kind of just have to accept that it's weird and just deal with it.